If your party is elected, what measures will you take to improve and enhance nutrition in Ontario schools?
Well, one thing we won't try to do is ban that in schools, I'll tell you that. It's true. That was the slide right there. You know, again, I think what we've talked about earlier tonight is sort of a lead by example. We need to have a Buy Ontario pledge in our schools, in our hospitals, in our correctional facilities. I've heard a lot from people in Leeds, Grenville, both during this election and also during the federal election, about expecting our higher levels of government to lead by example and to make sure that we do all we can to promote our dairy products and to promote our other agricultural products in every aspect of our legislative work. So I think that should be a number one thing. I know we have a tremendous group here in Leeds Grenville, but I think by leading by example and to have a Buy Ontario policy, that's what we need to work for. But trying to ban chocolate milk in schools, I think it's ridiculous.
The previous government, current government, they both made a number of moves that has all but shut you local producers out of being able to supply local government institutions, whether it's schools, whether it's prisons, whether it's the local hospitals. In their zeal to cut jobs and give tax breaks to major corporations, what they've done is they've streamlined the food process so that all the food for all those facilities all comes from a rethermalized plant where they package the food the day before. It goes on a tray, it sits there, and then it's shipped out from Toronto, and we shouldn't be doing it. It's as simple as that. But it's being done. And if you elect me, that'll stop. Thank you.
I feel awesome right now because our party has now committed in the rural platform to add more healthy food to our schools and institutions, making sure that our kids are the best fed ever. Now, with that, I have a request from the Ontario dairy producers, and one of their requests was the passage of a regulation requiring all primary schools to offer elementary school milk programs. And I have been given permission that when elected to represent Leeds Grenville, that will be my first private member's bill, and I will ensure that milk goes to our kids in our schools.
I feel awesome now too, because there's a question I know the answer to. This is actually our first plank in our Access to Healthy Food for Ontarians, and that is establish a comprehensive healthy school food program, including purchasing targets for local food, including local, sustainable, and local organic. This is really part of our entire buy local. We need to support local economies. We're all about community. Local money should stay in the community. It should be spent on local food. This is not only good for as a driver for the local economy, it also reduces carbon emissions if we're not trucking papayas in from South America. We've set a target that 40% of all food sold in public institutions should be local to start with, and we're going to raise from there. So, yeah, we definitely have a plan to bring healthy local food to children in Ontario.
What are your party's views on the current round of discussion in regard to the coexistence of agricultural practices and species of risk? An example for our area would be the bobolink and harvesting profitable foliage lake.
I have to admit, I've never heard of a bobolink.
Bobolink.
Bobolink. I'm not sure what that is. But what I can say...
It's a bird that nests in long in hay.
Oh, you mean like a red-necked blackbird?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. What I can say is that, again, it goes back to sustainability, right? And as family farmers, you want a sustainable farm. You want a farm that's going to be healthy, soil's healthy. If you're going to have healthy soil and healthy agriculture, it doesn't mean massive monoculture farms. It means you've got to have some diversity on your farm. Does it mean that you have to look after a bird that I'm not sure even looks like? But yeah, certainly we want to maintain our well, hey, if you don't know, you don't know. You want to maintain you want to maintain biodiversity, but it shouldn't fall entirely on the backs of farmers and rural landowners. It's a shared cost because it's a shared heritage and a shared future, right? So that's what I have to say about that very difficult question. Thank you.
These situations where more and more species are being declared endangered are affecting all of us farmers more and more every year. It cannot just be a one-sided event. It has to be worked together between the various ministries that are involved and the farmers and the Ontario Federation of Agriculture and the dairy producers, all those groups who come to the table to make agriculture happen in Eastern Ontario have to be at the table, deciding what's the best way. It can't be just on the dairy farmer's lap. And sometimes it's silly. The situation with the bobolink in the hayfields, there is a lot fewer hayfields today than there was 20 years ago, and I'm sure many of those bobolinks can have a lovely home in all that pasture land that's just growing up to grassland. So we have to work together to make sure that the bobolink is safe, but that the farmer doesn't become an endangered species, because the farmer is just as important.
I suppose as the Green Party candidate, I shouldn't really say this, but I think the farmer is actually more important than the bobblehead. But I think, these issues are often framed in such a polarizing manner that it's like, either the economy is going to be driven or we're going to lose the endangered species, and people take different sides and they bicker about it. There doesn't really have to be a conflict. These things can coexist, and one of the ways that we can make sure that it coexists and that it does become a major problem is by ensuring that there is land set aside for biodiversity. One of the ways that we make sure that land is set aside for biodiversity is by remunerating farmers for having land set aside on their farm for biodiversity, and that's what we're talking about doing in the Alice program. So you can still harvest your hay, but you can also have, your back 10 acres for bobblehead birds.
Well, I have to admit that I've talked about bobolinks a lot. In fact, I'm a bit sick of talking about bobolinks and butternut trees and turtles, and I've heard a lot from farmers about some of the environmental issues with species at risk and how it affects development on the farm. And I guess it all goes back to something that my party's talked about a lot, and that's property rights. And that there has to be some incentive for environmental stewardship, or there has to be some compensation. So if the government is forcing you to adhere to an environmental regulation, then the government needs to come through with an incentive or compensation, fair compensation for the farmer. And it's just, it's something that we believe in. It's part of our change book, and we just feel that from a rural riding, from what I've heard on the impact of some of these pieces of legislation, a government's got to come through with that compensation and provide that property rights for farmers.
Thank you for coming here tonight. I wanted to meet all the candidates. I'm from Rockville. My name is Jack McNamee. I have a family farm about 5 minutes from here, Belmy's Lake. Now, earlier we were talking about reclaiming the land. And we're reclaiming the land up there. We planted soybeans this year. But it's the cost of running a diesel tractor to reclaim this land. Now, were we a mile where there used to be all farms, small farmers, and they can't afford the diesel fuel, the cost of oil in their homes. So my question is, what would you do to help the farmers with the cost of diesel fuel and home energy? Please, thank you.
I know it's not an easy answer, and it's not a nice answer, but the first thing we have to do is pay down the hydro debt. Whether we like it or not, it's as simple as that. If each one of us on our farms got a hole in the roof of our barn or our house, we would take out a loan immediately, because God knows we don't have the money laying around in our pockets. And we would get that hole fixed so it didn't ruin everything else downstream. And when we took that loan out, we wouldn't take it out as a 60-year mortgage for our kids to pay down. Because I guarantee that everyone in this room is a responsible parent, and they would make sure that their kids were taken care of. That's what we all do. So that's what we're doing right now. We're paying down that horrible fee that's left there with the hydro, get it down so our kids don't go through what we're going to. Now what do? We're paying 10% off the top to all our households to make sure that there is some help. And we're going to make sure that we continue to do that. As we get more and more green items online, it's going to help offset some of those costs as well. But to say today that we're going to lower the cost of diesel, or we're going to get rid of the HST or whatever off of diesel, I can't tell you that. I wish I could. What I'll tell you is that Ray Heffernan, sitting in Queen's Park, will fight to do that. Because he knows the hell you're going through. But I can't tell you that's going to happen today. Because we have to be responsible and pay it down now.
What the Green Party is going to do is they're going to give you a tax cut on your income tax so that you'll have more money in your pocket to be able to pay for your diesel. What we're not going to do is pursue short-sighted quick fix solutions like knocking the HST off the cost of gas. If you lower the cost of gas, people are going to consume more gas. It's a finite resource. We're going to burn through it faster, and that's going to drive market values up. So you're going to end up paying more money on your gas. In the near future, just that money is going to be going to the oil company rather than to the government to pay for services that we require. As for debt retirement charges, that's just a ridiculous shell game. I mean, the Conservative Party is really trying to pull the wool over people's eyes. You can't just make a debt go away. The debt exists. If you take away the payment off of your hydro bill, you're going to be paying it out of your income tax. They're just, I mean, it's laughable. It makes me angry that they have so little faith in our intelligence. They try to pull this crap.
And Jack, to answer your question, a lot of farmers have talked to me about the burden on home heating and electricity. And in our change book, which is fully costed, we're going to provide relief to people on the farm. We're going to provide relief to Ontarians by reducing the HST on electricity and home heating fuel. We're going to be providing a reduction for removing the debt retirement charge because we're going to do a forensic audit. We believe that the funds, there's been more than enough money raised to delete that debt retirement charge on people's bills. But more importantly, we're going to also give farmers the opportunity to opt out of time of use rates. You know, it's funny, I was in the legislature with my colleague, Jim Wilson, and one of the farmers in his riding, one of the dairy farmers, wanted him to ask the Premier. I was right there when he asked the Premier, because the farmer wanted to know how the cow is supposed to read time to know that to do all its electricity use off peak. So we're going to give farmers that opportunity to whatever works for them, to give them the opportunity to opt out of the rates, but plus give them the benefits that they deserve by removing that burden off hydro and home heating fuel.
Well, I'm really glad to see the Conservatives copied our platform on this anyways, because we were the first out to say that we were reducing the tax on gasoline, home heating costs, by 1% per year, rolling the HST off. So a little bit, every little bit matters. But what really counts, and I'd like to thank Jack for his question, what really counts is not the cost of the gasoline, but the price that you get for your product at the end of the day. The economy is built on the amount of money that circulates in it, and the amount of money that comes through your pockets and that you can hold on to at the end of the day. And if you can't sell your product, what your farm is producing for a fair price, and get a fair return, and not have a fertilizer, a multinational fertilizer company come along the next year and spike the price of fertilizer to match the little bit of extra money you got because the price of your commodity went up, then you're not getting ahead, people. And that's really the key. You want to be able to sell your product for a decent return because you work hard and you should get a decent return for it. And for the last 20 years, you haven't. And that's got to change. And you change that by changing how the system's been run for the last 20 years. And that means you get together, you use marketing boards, you use production quotas, and you get some stability in it so that you actually make a return, so you can support your families and you can build a viable community. And that's really what we're all here about.